Hello and welcome to the Brutal Iron Gym podcast, where our goal is to cut through the BS and deliver the brutal truth about topics related to health and happiness. Today's podcast is number 1477. The topic is nutrition and the title is Eating for Lean Growth. So what we talked about recently in the last nutrition podcast, it was podcast 1473, and we covered an IFBB Pro diet. Now, that diet was to lose fat. So it was a diet as part of their competition prep. The fun part was just seeing, what do you pay attention to when you want to get a pro card? How detailed does it need to be? What are the food selections? That kind of stuff. So what I wanted to cover today was a similar approach, but we're actually going to talk about building. So this is dieting to gain size. Now, we're wanting to gain size, but without really any fat formation. We would like to do this as lean as possible. That's the goal. So what we have here is one of my clients. He has his meals broken down for the day with his macros and calories included for each meal. And then what we were going through was just trying to see, were there places we could clean this up to help him continue to gain size, but get a little bit leaner. He had felt that he was a little getting sloppy in the sense where he's still lean. If I had to take a shot at the body fat percentage, I'd say maybe 15%, something like that. So he's still very lean. However, he's wanting to be leaner while still gaining. So it's basically like if I can catch any kind of fat gains at 15%, I know I don't accidentally get to 20. So why wait and just try to catch it ahead of time? So I want to read through what his current diet was and then the suggestions that I made for changes, and then we'll talk through those ideas. So his first meal is at 7 a.m. Now at 7 a.m., he has 1,000 calories, and it comes from a shake. So it's 3 servings of oatmeal, 1 serving of Fairlife whole milk, a scoop of protein, a scoop of almond butter, and then 1.5 servings of frozen blueberries. Now that's 1,000 calories, 60 grams of protein, 35 grams of fat, and 113 grams of carbohydrates. Now, a little fast forward here, I guess, is one of my suggestions I gave to him on this was he would be leaner if he switched this to whole foods. You can keep the macros being carb dominant. And one of the purposes of that is when you wake up and we want to feed his body for growth, we want to try to get nutrients into his body after he's been sleeping. So he's been fasting for 6 to 8 hours, meaning that whatever nutrients he had before he went to bed, like from whatever he ate, they're all gone. So now he's waking up in a fasted state. If anything he does in a fasted state hinders muscle building. Absolutely, 100%. So we want to get food into him quickly, and by having it be carb dominant, it's going to digest faster to get the energy nutrients into his system and get the protein into his system. So you wouldn't want a really high fat meal because that takes longer to digest. That would take longer to get the protein into his system. Now, for people who do keto diets, there's ways to bend the rules to get protein in faster. So sometimes I've had clients, they'll wake up, they'll drink a protein shake, and then in 20 to 30 minutes, they'll then eat a whole food meal. In the protein shake, if it's whey protein powder being digested by itself, it gets in the bloodstream relatively quickly. So that's a way to kind of skirt around it if you want to do fat-based foods. But it's typically not the best way to build muscle tissue and put on a ton of size by doing keto. Keto is typically something more so people do to control calories to try to lose body fat. Now, what I suggested was that he switched to whole foods, like a meat, maybe whole eggs, and then a carb, like a starchy kind of slower digesting carb, like rice, pasta, etc. And what he ended up choosing, what we were talking about, was bagels. So he had tried to do potatoes, shredded potatoes, turkey sausages, and eggs, and it was just too much volume. And potatoes would require a crap ton of volume. So yes, that would have been a pain in the butt to try to get in. So he asked, what about bagels? And I said, hell yeah, go for it, So we figured out a meal that would be 2 whole bagels, 2 slices of cheese, 2 whole eggs, and a 3/4 cup of egg whites. Now that'll put him right around his 1,000 calories. That'll put him right around his 60 grams of protein. And that's going to be mostly carb-based. So that's going to be a good way for him to get in a full meal that would still be digestible. He's not going to worry as much about, trying to eat 1,000 calories worth of shredded potatoes, but it's going to get him a better response from his body, in the sense that it peaks a little bit of the thermic effect of food, which, people argue might only, not that people argue it, but they've done studies and roughly estimate around 5 to 10% of your total calories that you would burn come from the thermic effect of food. So what thermic effect of food is how many calories your body burns to break food down. So when you eat something, your body has to work to break that food apart to get the energy from it. So you might eat 100 calories of something, but your body has to use 12 calories of energy to get anything out of it. So you net only 88 calories out of the 100. So the amount of calories you burn to break the food down that you eat, the more complex the food is in structure, and the slower it digests, the more thermic effect of food you get. So you end up burning more calories. So by him switching from a shake to whole food, it increases his thermic effect of food. Now you might say, okay, well, you said it was only 5 or 10%. That doesn't seem very significant. Well, it kind of is, because we're eating around 4,000 calories. So on his training days, he's eating 4,000 calories. So his thermic effect of food can be between 200 to 400 calories in a day. 200 to 400 calories in a day is about as much as you would adjust somebody's calories if you were wanting to lose fat or wanting to build more muscle. So if he's eating 4,000 calories and I say, hey, I want you to drop to only 3,600, that would be going into a caloric deficit for fat loss. He wouldn't maximize his muscle building. He would be trying to not lose muscle, of course, build a little muscle when he can, but he would be focused more on fat loss. Whereas if we go from 4,000 to 4,400, if we added 400, that would actually cause him to gain more weight, and then it might actually cause him to gain more body fat. So maybe it's too high of calories and his metabolism can't adjust to eventually burning that much. So 5%, 5 to 10% can be very significant, because that's about all that we would change from to go from a diet like where he's at now, where he's building a good amount of muscle, being lean. If you accidentally adjusted it 5 to 10%, he would all of a sudden lose fat but maybe not build as much muscle, or the other way, he would actually gain a bunch of body fat. So 5 to 10% is significant, so it's worth playing around for to try to maximize that amount. Then what it does also is it helps to spread out the release of those nutrients until his next meal. So he eats at 7 a.m. and then he eats again at 11 a.m. The breakfast shake that he was having would not have lasted the full 4 hours. He would have started to get hungry a little bit early, which means he would have had the protein dropping out of his bloodstream, and for a little bit of time he wouldn't have been able to really build any muscle because he wouldn't have had any protein available. So trying to push more slower digesting foods, but still fast digesting overall in the grand scheme of things, is helping to improve muscle building between the meals. It reduces water retention because it spreads out the digestion, and the body uses more water to digest whole foods than it does liquids. So that's kind of the idea of making these changes, is they seem very subtle, but they are significant in their own little ways. Now, when you make 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 of these changes a day, you get a really big difference. So that was kind of our first change. His second meal at 11 a.m. is 760 calories, and it's 8 ounces of ground turkey with 1 pack of Uncle Ben's jasmine rice. So that's 760 calories. It's 51 grams of protein, 20 grams of fat, 85 grams of carbs. I said, good meal. Awesome. And it was a really good amount of protein right there. Still good to be carb based because he's up and active and he's doing things, he's moving around. So he's going to want the energy of that meal immediately rather than getting into a deficit of energy nutrients, and then all of a sudden his muscle building process will be slowed down. Then at 3 p.m. he eats again. And he has that same meal, 8 ounces of ground turkey with a pack of jasmine rice. Again, 760 calories, 51 grams of protein, 20 grams of fat, 85 grams of carbs. Great. Again, really good meal. So this is excellent. So in the first 3 meals of the day, he's having roughly 2,500 calories. So he's having 25 of his 4,000. Let me bust out a little math here because it's a little too early in the morning for me to try to figure that out. So that would be 62%. So let's just say he's having 2/3. So he's having 2/3 of his calories by 3 p.m. So he's having 2/3 of his calories by roughly about 2/3 through the day. Maybe a little bit short of that. But it's pretty awesome. So it's making sure that he's not under eating during the day and then overeating at night, which just promotes submaximal muscle building growth with fat gain. So we don't want that. So he's doing a great job. He's getting a ton of protein in, a ton of carbs in. You know, he's following kind of our idea of getting more calories in when you're more busy, that kind of thing. So not wait until the end of the day. And by this time, he's already had 160 grams of protein. So this is pretty badass. Tons of protein available for muscle building throughout the day. So that's something to consider, is if he worked out the day before, and he does very aggressive, very, very challenging workouts. If he works out the day before, he would eat his meal after the workout, and the muscle building process would be starting, post-workout, but it would take 48 to 72 hours to really fully complete. So if he works out like yesterday, what he eats all day today contributes or takes away from his muscle development from that workout. So too often people get a workout, they do a great post-workout meal, and then they eat, haphazardly or like not really without any plan the rest of the time. It takes 48 to 72 hours to recover from a full-on bodybuilding-based workout. So you need to be having high protein. You need to have good calories throughout the day so that where you're fueling the growth from yesterday's workout. So it's very important that we were doing that. Now, the next thing is he would go into his workout in the evening and then eat afterwards. What I asked him to do was to add an intra-workout. Intra-workouts are freaking amazing. They're like a magic button for muscle growth. When you're training, you're tearing apart muscles. You're draining the system of energy nutrients. And then when you end the workout, you're depleted as much as you would ever be. Your body then has to try to dig you out of that hole back to normal before it can even put any new tissues and new things back in your system. So an intra-workout helps you not be left in such a hole at the end of the workout. So what I said I would add an intra-workout drink, about 20 to 40 grams of whey protein, about 20 to 40 grams of simple carbs, base and sugars. You don't have sugars there. This will help fight muscular degradation, accumulation. Fancy word of just like muscle breakdown. It helps fight just how much muscle is broken down by the end of the workout. And it improves his recovery, and it jump-starts the protein synthesis, muscle creation process. So essentially, he's not going to end the workout as destroyed, and he's already giving his body what it needs to start recovering. So he's going to start to recover better between workouts by adding an intra-workout drink. So the 20 to 40 grams of protein typically is going to come from whey protein, like a whey protein powder. And then the sugars, one of the easiest ways to do is just Gatorade powder. It's super cheap. And then I said if you have an addition, if you have a little extra money, you want to be extra, make sure this works 100%, you can get L-leucine powder and L-glutamine powder. They're helpful to the muscle building process. Even though like L-glutamine, it's like the most abundant amino acid we have in our blood system, we still will run out of it when we have very strenuous and exhausting workouts. So it's good to put that in. Then L-leucine is a limiter. It's an amino acid that if you don't have enough of, the body really can't get past that. So if you don't have enough of that, it doesn't matter how much of anything else you have. So adding 5 grams of L-leucine, 5 grams of L-glutamine into that intra-workout drink. Great idea. They're super cheap, by the way. You can just buy like the powders themselves and add them to your drink. But they're super cheap, and that would be something if he wants to have an extra emphasis of this being, the perfect diet. He can add those in. So I have him adding that. And then his fourth meal of the day is at 7 p.m., kind of right after the workout. He was having 3 servings of Cheerios, 1 serving of fat-free Life Milk, and 1 large banana. And I said I would change this meal. I would drop the carbs, flip the macros. I would not carb load post-workout. Now that we're doing the intra-workout drink, he definitely doesn't need that. People will say, like, don't carbs help digest the proteins faster? Yes, but it's not overly significant, and it's definitely not significant if you're already doing an intra-workout drink. So when I did my master's in nutrition, I did a thesis on protein digestion post-workout. So I know a ridiculous amount of information, more than I'll never need to know, about how protein digests post-workout and whether you mix it with carbs and what types of carbs, because there's different types of, breakdowns of sugars, like fructose, dextrose, sucrose, those kind of things. So you can have carbs post-workout, in a little bit, like maybe just 20, 30, 40 grams, and that can help kind of shuttle the protein into the muscle cells, but you also don't need it, especially if you're doing an intra-workout. You really don't need it. So what I was telling him was, after the workout, your glycogen stores, the carbohydrates that you have stored within your muscle cells, they're going to be the most empty they would be all day. And then since his activity is low after the workout, he doesn't really need to replenish the glycogen stores because he doesn't need tons of energy. So let's leave them empty. let's leave those glycogen stores super low, and it'll jack up the body fat loss process. So he'll now. We don't want to be in a caloric deficit, but we want to go ahead and let his body start converting over to starting to burn body fat. The dietary fats through his food. That opens up the channels to burn body fat. So then as he eats throughout the night and then as he sleeps, his body fat burning system is already up and running, and it'll help him get a little bit leaner while he also pours in protein to get enough, protein for muscle building. So he said that he had done this because he saw a lot of professionals eating this type of food. And I said, yeah, but the professionals are taking insulin. They're taking, enough T3 to get way above normal physiological levels. So simple carbohydrates, they're going to get better shuttling of the carbohydrates and muscles to their cells. Plus, if they're 280 pounds with six-pack abs, they have a shit ton of glycogen that they can store. So for them to eat like a simple meal like that, for them to eat a meal that was, say, 100 grams of carbs, that would be like the average type of bodybuilder person, like maybe, if we're lean around 185, 200, that would be like you eating 40 grams of carbs. So for them to eat 100, even 150 at 280 some pounds of lean muscle mass, that's a penny in the whale kind of thing. And especially if they're taking insulin, especially if they have T3, and especially if they're taking growth hormone as well. So a lot of the drugs that they would be taking will help the metabolism or the breakdown of the nutrients. That's one of the best purposes of taking the drugs, is they just help you with protein synthesis. Since we're not taking the drugs, since we're not 280 pounds, lean, we can't quite do what they do. We have to do some other things to get to that point. And this is something that I've noticed in my body. Like I'm now 283 pounds, and you can see my abs. So when I first started lifting, I was 165 pounds, and you couldn't see my abs. I was so fat. You could grab like a roll of fat around my midsection at 165 pounds. So I've gained an enormous amount of muscle tissue, well over 100 pounds of lean mass. Now, what I get to eat now, oh man, it feels like feels like a day off compared to what I used to have to do with how strict I had to be before to control body fat levels. Now, if I want to drink like a whole 32-ounce bottle of Gatorade, it makes absolutely no damn bit of difference in my body fat levels. So getting bigger, having more muscle tissue, and more glycogen stores, it does give you a lot more leeway with food. So I have noticed that with my own self by gaining 100 plus pounds. So there's some things we can learn from watching pros, but then there's also some things that pros only get away with because they're pros. Now, What we also said was the last meal, his 10 p.m. meal, which is what he eats kind of right before bed, is 810 calories. It's 5 eggs, 1 turkey sausage, 1 serving of almond butter, 2 pieces of David's protein bread, and 1 serving of sugar-free jelly. So the macros on that is 810 calories, 60 grams of protein, 55 grams of fat, 50 grams of carbs. And I said, this is a good meal, but I would push the fats a bit more than the carbs. So even though fats have 9 calories per gram, carbs are 4 calories per gram, if he has 55 grams of fat and 50 grams of carbs, it would look like they're equal. They're not. He does have, kind of like a 2/3 emphasis-ish on fats than carbs. But I would drop the carbs even more, just because you don't need them before you go to bed, and that will just help him continue to burn more fat throughout the night. So I suggested he switch that. So we talked about maybe switching over to maybe a meal of steak, avocado, and eggs. And I said, great, go for it. That's going to be a nice complex protein source, the steak. It's going to take a while to digest, like throughout the night, and it actually might take longer depending on how fatty of steak he uses. But that would be a good meal to switch over to. So what we're going to be doing here is still keeping him around his 4,000 calorie goal. But what we did was we slowed down the digestion of breakfast. We made it more complex. And then we added the intra-workout drink. And then we changed his evening meals to reduce the carbohydrate intake and swap out for fats. That's going to help him a lot. That's going to help him still have good energy for the workouts. He's still going to be enough calories and protein to be building muscle tissue. But it's going to help him just be leaner because there's less water retention. There's less moments where he's shuttling in carbs, but he really should be just trying to burn body fat. So there's less kind of moments in the day where things that are like a misuse of time, where we can just get more from the time. And that helps a lot. So I thought it might be fun to share kind of what discussions and conversations I get into with people who are very complex, very detailed in their nutrition. And last time, like I said, we did it for dieting. This time I wanted to go through it for gaining size. So overall, he eats a meal at 7 a.m., 11 a.m., 3 p.m., now an intra-workout drink, 7 p.m. and 10 p.m. So he eats 5 times a day plus an intra-workout drink. That's very normal. When somebody wants to maximize muscle development, you're going to need to eat frequently because it's hard to get enough calories in if you try to eat it all in smaller, like 1 meal or 2 meals. And it doesn't even match physiologically how the body actually likes to use these nutrients. So eating often throughout the day is great. He never really varies from this. He eats the same damn thing all the time. If he ever misses like some of these foods, he'll make sure he still hits his macros and not just calories for the meal. He'll actually try to make sure he still gets his protein correct and he gets his carbs and fats somewhat correct for the meal, depending on what food he has available. So if something crazy happens and all of a sudden he has to eat food he's not used to, he just kind of shifts it around and makes up what he needs to. So if you're wanting to, gain size like a pro would gain size, this is kind of what it looks like. You're eating frequently throughout the day. You have your calories and protein distributed equally throughout the day as much as you would in the evening. You're paying attention to meals other than just the post-workout meal. So it's not just a pre-workout drink, have a hardcore workout, eat a big meal post-workout, and then screw around the rest of the time. So every single meal, every hour, every minute of the day needs to be fueled if you want to build muscle tissue. Okay? So I thought that was exciting. It might be overwhelming, but I thought it was exciting to maybe hear what the version of a professional-based diet looks like, but when it's a diet to gain size, which is pretty cool. Okay. Well, hopefully that was fun. If you have any follow-up questions, just shoot me an email at brutalirongym@gmail.com. I'm always happy to answer questions. It's fun to do so. Okay. Well, if you like today's podcast or the podcast in general, please consider sharing it. The more people we share the podcast with, the more people we can help. That's the whole point of the podcast. So if you share it on social media, that reaches the most amount of people, but you can even share it in a conversation with somebody. Just let them know that it exists. Thank you to the people who financially support the podcast with donations. The podcast is well over $1,000 a year for hosting costs. I give an hour to it every day, and we want to keep it for free. So I appreciate the donations that help cover some of that cost. It really, really, really does help, so thank you. If you want to donate, you can do it at our website, www.brutalirongym.com. There's an option there for one-time donation, monthly donation, yearly donation, even just $5 a month. It does help out. Also, if you like the information we share in our podcast, you can find more from us on our social media channels on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube under the name Brutal Iron Gym. And if you have any questions, feedback, suggestions, anything you want to know, let us know at our email, brutalirongym@gmail.com. As always, I hope this was helpful, and thank you for listening.